Welcome everyone. We are UAB GHCC Nicaragua. My name is Ken Hagan. I'm an undergrad in the School of Public Health.
I'm Cara Hoffmans. I'm a graduate student in Anthropology of Peace and Human Rights.
I'm Paulo Frege. I'm a graduate student in the Department of Biology.
And I'm Alex Plazas. I'm a sophomore student in the Department of Engineering.
And with that, we'll get started.
Yeah, so traffic injuries affect millions of people around the world. So around the world, 1.25 million people actually die in these road crashes, and 20 to 50 million more people are affected by non-fatal injuries. 90% of these happen in developing nations, despite them only having 54% of the vehicles in the world. Specifically in Nicaragua, in 2015, 15 per 100,000 individuals died in car crashes, but that's slightly lowered in 2016 to 13.2 per 100,000. The life expectancy in Nicaragua for males is 72.6 years, and for females it's 78.9. But the Human Development Index places the country as a whole in the medium range at 0.604, and we're specifically looking at the city of Granada. This graph shows the transition from 1990 to 2015, where the adolescents are actually transitioning into the working class age population. So that signals to us that there's a need for more and better infrastructure.
So as we conduct ourselves as an NGO over the next 5 years, we'll have a set of guiding principles to ensure that the community is at the center of all of our actions. This will be based in community-based participatory research and program design, capacity building and local sourcing and hiring, under the understanding that no amount of direct aid is going to make millions of people safer or lift millions out of poverty, and that we need to build people up at the community level. Furthermore, this will be a sustainable community initiative in the scope that once we are gone after our 5 years, because this is rooted in community values and interests, this will continue long after we're gone. So looking at an analysis of the key issues, deaths by road user category, we'd like to draw your attention to the fact that a full third of the deaths occurring in Nicaragua due to traffic violence are by pedestrians, meaning that a full third of those who die will have never been in a car around the time of the attack.
Now, the problems of infrastructure in Nicaragua are multifaceted. First and most startling is that only 10% of the roads in the country are paved. Now, we'll be working in Granada, which is a bigger city, but even in the city where roads are paved, there are often no sidewalks. And even if there are sidewalks, these sidewalks are in grave disrepair and need of repairs. Now, since there are limited access to these sidewalks, municipalities often have to go back and start to rebuild them. But the municipalities are severely underfunded. And even when they do get the funds to then start these projects are often misguided and don't actually go to solve any of the community needs. Now, when the community goes and sees that the government isn't addressing their needs and they aren't being listened to, this goes to deepen their distrust in the government, and furthermore, it causes them to be apathetic toward involving themselves in their community.
So looking at the issue of funding, we see that Nicaragua does have a designated lead agency around traffic safety and education, as well as a national road safety strategy that did have a fatality reduction target between the years of 2013 and 2017. But what's more important is the lack of funding to implement the strategy or to include the national center in the funded national budget, neither of which were done, creating a clear barrier to enforcement. So looking at Nicaragua's road traffic policies on the surface, they do appear to be rigorous. They do have a national speed limit, drink driving law, motorcycle helmet law, and restraint laws for both adults and children. Many of these are ranked 9 out of 10 in terms of enforcement. However, what we can see is that even where enforcement is ranked nearly perfectly, there's an absence in the quantitative rate that these enforcements are being followed by. So there's no data to indicate what actual percentage of the population is properly following or using these safety standards. Furthermore, on the issue of standards, we see that for vehicles, frontal impact standards, electronic stability control, and pedestrian protection are not enforced in registered vehicles. With vehicles on the road that don't require this standard in order to be drivable, this creates a clear barrier to the safety of citizens driving motorcycle and pedestrians.
Yeah, yearly in many countries, 2 to 5% of the GDP is actually lost due to road crash related injuries and deaths. So the economic potential for that, by building safe and effective infrastructure such as sidewalks, Nicaragua can actually avoid that by preventing premature deaths, injuries, and disabilities.
This is who we are, Buen Viaje, road safety advancement through community engagement, research development, and national advocacy. Who we are a group of mothers collaborating with our communities in order to advance the safety of our children and families. We also advocate nationally for traffic safety legislation and funding for those programs that you saw. So we're inspired largely in part by MAP, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, which has been proven very successful in the United States, both in public education and communities, as well as national legislation and funding. Mothers have extensive influence over the risk behaviors of pedestrians and drivers. They themselves are an example for their children, and they have large influence over their families. Also, women, specifically mothers in Nicaragua, have organized before in the Sandinista Revolution. They have organized both locally in their communities and nationally, and have ascended to political positions that hold great influence and power in the country. So what we want to do is we want to harness these mothers' strengths, their existing influence already over their families and their communities, and we want to help organize with them an opening dialogue between the communities and the governments about their needs for infrastructure and funding. And we just really want the mothers to be the social mobilizers. They are already a part of their communities, so influencing, and who knows how to keep their children safe better than mothers.
Now, in terms of infrastructure, not only do we want to build pedestrian bridges, but we want to build bridges between communities and their governments. Now, in doing so, we're going to be using the participatory community infrastructure works model. And how this model first works is that solutions are brought to the table with the community and the government in mind. The two parties are going to be at the bargaining table, which we are going to be facilitating and get that discussion going so we can really see the needs of the community and take what the resources that the government can provide to contrast that with the needs of the community and then any help we can provide in terms of funding or any other kind of resources available. Now, we're going to be bringing a funding strategy that is financed by both the community and the government. And we're going to be using these social mobilizers in terms of women and have them as our pitchmen of sorts, bring together the community to allow different solutions to come about and then mobilize the whole community around those issues to raise funding for these projects. Then, not only that, we're going to then take those members of the community, take those mothers, and get them working on the projects. The mothers aren't going to be working themselves, but they will be main factors in influencing people to come around these projects and really get them sustainable and keep them moving forward. And after that, and this is a basic model of how the participatory community infrastructure works, and that we're going to be facilitating that discussion, bringing all of those actors together, and negotiating the financing, which is a large part of what keeps projects stops projects is the financing. If we can get past that barrier, we can then go on to building these bridges, building these pedestrian walkways with the community actors, and then going on to hire the community actors that maintain these, and not only do that, but also give ideas for other projects they could do, and to keep the sustainability cycle going. And not only that, the best part is that this model has already been tested in Nicaragua. And out of 650 works a Swedish organization has done in the region, this cost them $9 million. But for every 80 works they completed, almost 12,000 families were benefited. This means kids who can go to school and don't have to worry for their lives, and mothers and fathers who can now go to work and don't have to compete with roads and with cars for roadway space. And of course, this also provides residual benefits as well, as we're going to be giving back to the community jobs that they can sustain, that not only sustain themselves, but sustains their family. They can use any money they get from that to then go right back into community projects.
In addition to our infrastructure strategy, Buen Viaje has several long-term strategy goals that can be organized into prevention, safety, emergency response, recovery, and sustainability. For prevention, we plan on being active in K through 12 education, as well as sourcing local universities to provide traffic safety awareness and education. For safety, there will be improvements to infrastructure providing safer, realistic travel options for the community. For emergency response, we will host community training in emergency response, basic CPR, and stabilization that we believe can increase the rate of survival during road accidents. For recovery, we'll have grief and trauma support centers partnered with local churches in order to give victims, families, and survivors of safety incidents room to grieve and build trust in their community. And sustainability in order to have long-term advancement of this project. So going on to measurements, feasibility, and analysis. So far, we have budgeted for the next 5-year period all of our staffing, infrastructure projects, 40 coming out of the initial $2 million budget, and an additional 40 projects to specifically build sidewalks along main travel routes to schools that will affect children out of the additional UNICEF grant. Looking at driver safety education, the data monitoring system, and research staff to ensure that we're seeing the feedback that the community is giving us. We do have some leftover budget, and we plan that this will be used to address community issues as they pop up over the 5-year period. Looking at methods and measurement, we'll be surveying communities before intervention and 1 year after to get a sense of the community's safety level while traveling, the level of education concerning travel safety, and their methods of travel to make sure we are up to date. We'll also be leveraging the new data monitoring system, tracking the data gap and enforcement of policy and using that to our advantage, and comparing to similar industrial cities. After the 5-year period, outcomes in Granada could be compared to similar larger cities such as Managua or Leon, and this will allow for the potential to generate government investment and national scaling of the project once the difference in cities is seen.
These are two of the most powerful mothers in Nicaragua, the Director General of National Police and the Vice President. They are wildly popular with the public. They are champions of the poor. They were women of the Sandinista Revolution, so they have organized and risen to power. And they themselves are mothers. So we are hoping that we can partner with them as our national allies to get funding, to have influence nationally and locally. And we would also like to partner with local schools. We want to give curricula to the schools to teach about especially pedestrian safety for children on their way to schools. And also with churches as safe meeting places for the community where we already have a building. They already feel safe and comfortable there. And they already know that as a community space.
On the infrastructure side, one of our biggest partners is going to be the US-based organization, Bridge to Prosperity. And what Bridge to Prosperity does is it gets undergrad students from universities across the United States, along with civil engineers, to go to different countries and build bridges or pedestrian sidewalks. Specifically, their work in Nicaragua consists of mainly these pedestrian bridges and of other walkways, as you see here. They're going to be beneficial in helping us organize the community around certain aspects, since they do pull people from the community to help them and get influence on what the project should be and how they should then complete it. They're also going to be hugely influential in getting us government resources when it comes to funding our projects, as they have already worked with communities who are local and who are in urban centers, as well as other rural communities.
So looking at some potential limitations, so Nicaragua does rate number 146 out of 176 on the corruption percentage index of countries that were surveyed. But we believe that both this and the required buy-in from communities and government can be addressed by using community participation to build the projects, design the projects, and actually implement the infrastructure. This will reorganize the power structures to coming from the bottom up and ensuring that people have the reasonable needs not only to become economically self-sufficient, but also to travel safely and not become permanently disabled or injured. One thing we'd like to stress is there is a need for immediate action as Granada continues to grow both in the tourism industry and as a major economic engine. We believe this will continue to further tax the infrastructure of Granada and Nicaragua overall, and that we need to take immediate action to begin building these community coalitions.
We're offering a solution that is sustainable, community-centered, and innovative. And we say to you, as we end our presentation today, Buen viaje, Nicaragua.